Good evening, all. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Monday night. Me and Mark are back asking what we ask every Monday night. What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on, Mark. Alexander Isak got me the best birthday present ever. 3 points. How about that?
It wasn't a bad end, was it, to your day? That's got to be said.
Absolutely. But we've got a bit of a twist with what's going on tonight, Mark, haven't we? Because we didn't do a post-match reaction because we were 3 or 4 pints in the post-match madness with all the Evermore crew, weren't we? Minus Adam.
Yeah.
We did have a pint for you in spirit, Adam. Unfortunately, you couldn't be there, but pretty much had a full house, mate, didn't we? Which was nice for a change.
We did. It was nice to get to see everybody in person instead of through a computer screen for a change. So that was really good. But yeah, we were missing Adam. So next time you're over, Adam, we'll definitely have to get the gang together.
Absolutely, get it sorted. But we'll get stuck in. We've got loads to cover in a minute. But just before we do a little bit of housekeeping, if you haven't already, please consider clicking that subscribe button. We'd love you to come on board with us. We're on something like 2,375, I think it is, subscribers. So loads of room for you. If it's the first time checking us out, consider smashing the button. 2 live shows. This one you're watching on a Monday and Wednesday with Evermore, as well as pop-up videos like transfer rumors and all sorts of stuff as well. And we're live tonight, so jump in the comments. Feel free. We've already got a few of the regulars in there. We've got Roger in the house. Ian's on board and Gibbo as well. Good evening to you, lads. So let's get stuck in then. So like we're saying, Mark, the first thing we're going to look at is a review of the Fulham game. I mean, obviously we were there. It's not very often both of us were at the game. We were at the game. We were in the Leazer's end, and it was a funny game, wasn't it? I mean, we're going to talk about this a bit on Evermore on Wednesday night. But after obviously the typical kind of introduction, the flags and the atmosphere and the Geordies chant and everything, it just seemed to be a little bit flat, wasn't it? Because it was a little bit of a scruffy game, I thought, wasn't it? After the kind of highs of the League Cup victory over Leicester, it seemed a little bit of an anticlimax, didn't it, when the game kicked off?
It was an odd game because when you and I'll bring them up in a second, but you look at all of the stats, it was a dominant performance in every aspect. There was, I mean, you look at it, and Fulham didn't have a sniff, but the game just didn't feel like that. It did feel oddly subdued for quite a while. I just think that the game never really got a chance to get going. There was the odd flash in the first half, and it wasn't really probably until the penalty that everybody kind of sort of came together, and that was the push. I think that was the nail in Fulham's coffin, that penalty miss, because it just drove the players on, it drove the crowd on, and it just got everybody into it. But I mean, you say we were the Leazers stand. I was at the very, very back. I was as far back as you could possibly imagine, and I was right next to the Fulham fans. They were so quiet. I mean,
they were too busy eating cheese boards, weren't they? That's what it was.
I said to the fella next to me, they piped up in the second half. I'm like, geez, I actually forgot they were there. They were so quiet. I completely forgot I was sitting next to them. I've never heard a set of away fans at any ground so quiet. I don't know what they paid their money for, because they didn't come and genuinely support the team as well as you would sort of imagine from a set of away fans. It was just so strange. But
and they're sixth in the league as well. It's not like they're in a relegation battle. They're
exactly.
doing well, so you would think they would have come out in numbers.
Utterly bizarre, and it was just a strange. It was strange atmosphere, and I've used strange about 15 times there. But it was an odd atmosphere right up until I think about the 69th minute.
Yeah,
and then for the last 20 minutes. That's what St James's Park is all about. It was loud, it was raucous, the chants were going, the ground was all up in one. The players thrive on it, and you could just see the switch that came from, right, that's our second chance, now we've got to go and take it. And everybody was driving forwards, they were picking a pass. There was very little errors at that point. Everybody was looking to make a difference, and it just, like I say, the stats don't bear that up, and it felt really patchy at times. But I mean, it was to me, it was an absolutely deserved 3 points. It was just a strange game.
Yeah, it was a bit odd. I mean, the big news before the game was obviously Joe Linton. Will he, won't he start? He did start. I thought he played quite well, especially in the first half. I thought he was everywhere. He was winning the ball back. He was being the typical Joe Linton that we all know and love. Longstaff was absolutely brilliant. We're going to talk about Sean in a minute. He's been getting some great praise, and rightly so. I suppose the one downside of the game was the injury to Bruno. We've got some comments in there about Bruno already. And I think Gibbo's smashed it in there already. I think Craig Hope thought it was about a week or 2 weeks.
Couple of weeks.
And there might be a change to formation, which we'll come on to in a minute. But I think for all of us watching, Mark, I mean, we were in Leeds, obviously everybody else in the ground. Guys in the comments, if you're in the ground, let us know. But he got injured quite early on. And as much as I love Eddie Howe, and I would never say a bad word about Eddie Howe, I couldn't get my head around why. But I'm going to. Well, it's not a bad word. It's just maybe a question. But I couldn't get my head around as to why he didn't hook him a lot sooner, because he was hobbling like mad, and everybody in the ground was saying he's fucked. And we've got massive games coming up. Obviously, the semi-final over 2 legs. Bruno's the man for us. Everything goes through him in that midfield. And looking at that Fulham team, yes, it was a bit frustrating in terms of Fulham did all right. They moved the ball around well. They had good shape, but I think you could have took Bruno off then and brought Maxi on and dropped Joe back into the midfield. And I don't think we would have been any weaker for it. But as it happened, he played on and he looked like he was getting a little bit better. He was getting on the ball a bit. He was moving around. But then when he comes off at half time, I was down having a pint with PK at this point. And on the screen, I could see him in floods of tears. And Joe Linton was having to help him off. So, I mean, I just hope that hasn't done him any more damage, Mark, in the long run, really.
No, I mean, it doesn't look like it. I guess from what it appears, a week, 2 weeks, if it is just a twisted ankle or a bit of a light sprain, but he's going to miss a couple of important games as the season goes on. If he's going to miss the semi-final first leg, especially, I guess depending on the result, you might not need to play the second leg. So that might be a blessing. If you get a good result away, then he's not needed. But it did seem a strange one when you consider how he went down. And it was, when you look at it in slow-mo, it was an awful sort of angle that his ankle went into.
It just jarred, didn't it, as he moved. I watched about a match of the day. It was horrible.
I've winced. Yeah, I mean, my ankle's
it was one of them.
Like glass anyway. So it's when you've shattered it once, you feel it. Trust me.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it did feel strange that he played on. I mean, he played on. It was odd because I thought to start with it, he misplaced a couple of passes. He was a little bit off on his timing with stuff.
He tried to chip that ball over to Miggy, didn't he? He couldn't get it up and over, and you knew something was up there when he did that. You thought
once that starts to, you can see that the difficulty that he was playing with it, and I think that decision to take him off should have come a little bit earlier. Definitely. But I don't think long run, I don't think that's made an awful lot of difference to how long he's going to be missing for. I think he was always probably, given what you've seen, he's probably always likely to have been out a week, 2 weeks. Hopefully it's no more. We've seen that comment before, haven't we, when players going to be out for a couple of weeks and they've been out for 3 months. So you hope it's not that situation. But all indications, I guess, that are coming out suggest that it's not going to be as bad as first feared.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We've got a comment there from Johnny Ola. Fed up with the Longstaff abuse. Hell of an engine. Local lad who we need for European football. Homegrown. People seem to forget it. Absolutely. We're going to get stuck into a bit of Sean in a minute because I thought he was immense, to be honest with you. Certainly on the goal as well. So definitely loving the Sean praise. I think he's been brilliant over the last few weeks as well, I think. And he certainly hasn't got the respect he deserves in some areas. So Roger's saying he's a few rows up behind the goal to the left a bit, Mark. He passed a comment how quiet they were as well. Absolutely, the Fulham fans, they were really, really quiet. But I mean, I think the big aspects of the game, obviously, we had a great view of it, Mark. You're going to pull up in a minute. So it was the two pens, one that definitely was and wasn't given, and one that potentially wasn't and was given. But I think the law of averages evened itself out at the end. Fulham definitely deserved a penalty. If you want to pull up the bits of analysis you were looking at after the game.
Well, the two separate sides. So I think the one that definitely got away with was Dan Burn. It's the second one in a couple of weeks, isn't it? Where I think it was a light pull, but it was a pull, and the guy, he's definitely. I mean, he's through on goal. I sort of tend to agree with a manager, Marco Silva. I think that's the penalty that gets given. That's a red card because he's through a
Longstaff's
goal.
not getting there. He's not getting there.
No, nobody's getting in to do that. And then the second one, and let's just try and get to that. I mean, the initial contact is Dick Odoba-Reid standing on Trippier, and you think, well, to me, that's the initial foul. He stands on Trippier. That's the foul. But then Trippier carries on his motion with his left foot and trips him. And I know you said after the game that you thought, that's a definite penalty. But if you kind of slow it down in its kind of, slowest format, it does look like the initial foul or the initial action is Reid's stand on Kieran. It's just so.
Is that not good centre forward play though? Is that not good centre forward play to get your body in the way where you're gonna?
I guess yes, in a sense, but if you land on the other player, then that goes beyond that. I think there was one at Old Trafford a couple of years ago where Man U got a penalty against Villa, and it was the ever cheerful Bruno Fernandes who did a similar thing, but stood halfway up Ezri Konsa's shin, and it got given as a penalty. Now, there was no trip involved in that. It was just purely that, Fernandes is Fernandes and threw himself to the floor, crying like a baby. But it's, I think the initial part of that is definitely Dick Odoba-Reid stands on Trippier. I'm not entirely sure that's a penalty. The Burn one,
100%.
I'm really convinced that. And because I missed the incident live, I'd nipped down. Oh, I'd gone to the loo. Let's be frank. There we go. And I missed it. So when I came back up, the play was at the other end. I think it had gone out for a corner. And I came up, saw the VAR screen. I was like, oh, what's going on? So I said the fella next to us, oh, what's going on? He says, possible penalty on Burn. I thought, well, it's down the other end. It's got to be a Newcastle penalty.
Yeah.
So and then referee goes to VAR, went, chatting to the fella, and went, well, that's a penalty then. If he's not already given it, he's going to VAR, it's going to get given. And he comes back and he points at the other end, and I'm going, what the hell have I missed? And then when they showed the replay and it was the trip, I was completely baffled at that point. But
long piss, mate. You shouldn't have had all them pints before the game. It was a long piss.
But it was because I have to go 70,000 flights of stairs to get to my seat.
That's very true. Very true.
But yeah, it was just. I think definitely Burn gets away with one. The second one isn't, and I think they even themselves out. The only difference, I guess, and I sort of agree with Marco Silva on that point, is Burn's then lucky to stay on the pitch.
Massive.
Because that really is. If that happens at the other end, you are screaming for that as a foul and a red card.
Oh, 100%. As one of the comments said before, Burn does that quite a lot. He does like a little pull on somebody, and it's just that little part of his game. I think when he's beaten for pace like that, his natural reaction is just to reach out an arm. And I think he has to watch that. He's got to be really, really careful with that. So, especially if we get into Europe, because, God, if we get into Europe, the guys throwing themselves all over the place, if Burn's doing that, you'd be getting red cards left, right, and centre. But obviously, the penalty was given. Up stepped the former Newcastle United striker. And we were never guessing what was going to happen next, Mark, were we? I mean, what the fucking hell was he doing with this penalty? I mean, I don't understand why his standing leg is so close to his kicking leg. I know he slips when he kicks it, but fair play to Nick Pope. He was out like a fucking shot, wasn't he, when he saw that? I mean, that's great reaction by Nick Pope.
He was pretty much appealing as he hit the floor because, he was the first one to see it. Everybody else looked at it and going, what on earth's going on?
What's happened? Yeah.
And again, the fella next to us I hadn't got a clue. For about 5 minutes afterwards, just turned around and went, what actually happened there? And it was, but you could clearly see it as he went to play it, and Pope was going the right way, and it deflects off and goes the other way, and Pope knew straight away.
Yeah. Who did he shove over? Was it Pereira? He launched somebody as he ran.
I think so. Like that, but I mean, he went down like he'd been shot by a sniper. No. It was ridiculous. Penalty. And that happened an awful lot during the game as well. And there was a lot of was a lot of that.
Shithousery by Fulham. There was a lot of that going on.
And the funniest part of it is you obviously saw the players, getting on with it. They were going down at every opportunity, throwing themselves down, holding their faces or their heads. And then as soon as Newcastle scored and Newcastle started to delay the game a little bit, the Fulham bench was going nuts. The players were giving this away. You just spent 89 minutes doing this and now you're kicking off. You can't have both. Do you know what I mean? So it was just, that was poetic.
That's a great comment by Shez there as well. He said, never in 100 years could you hope that a Mitro penalty. This could only mean one thing, God is a Geordie. Well, the chant was Mitro is a Geordie after that, Shez, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, Mitrovic must have been thinking, oh, shit. The Fulham fans
on his face. I mean,
he knew, though, didn't he?
He knew straight away.
Yeah.
Because he knew, because he turned around to look to see, has anybody seen that?
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, if it wasn't going to get picked up by the referee or by anybody else, it was going to get picked up by VAR. And you could almost see he's going to go and half celebrate. I've really done one here. And it was just, it's the strangest, funniest thing I think I've seen on a football pitch, probably since the beach ball. And it's one of those odd things you go, yeah, remember that. Do you know what I mean? It's one of the, it doesn't happen very often.
If it makes you feel any better, Mitro, it was not the worst penalty we've ever seen. That was probably this one right here when Robert Perez and Thierry Henry tried this ridiculous shit penalty for Arsenal. So if you want to feel better, Mitro, just go back and watch that. What a terrible penalty that was, by the way.
At least Mitro's went in. I mean, give him credit.
Exactly.
At least it went in. So
exactly. Yeah. BT saying Tinder was being his usual self in the dugout. We could see the Mad Dog giving it big licks from where we were as well. It was absolutely brilliant. BT. It was absolutely
I have to ask, because obviously from my vantage point, it's difficult to see exactly who everybody is on the bench. Was it Tyndall that was dancing in the
I think so.
dugout area once when Newcastle scored? Because I mean, it was crazy. Because I could see somebody bouncing around in there, dancing like crazy.
Yeah. I think How was giving it this. How was giving this, and Tyndall was having a little jig in front of Silva, which I thought was quite funny, and it just pissed him off. To be fair,
as Rogers, at the end of it, thoroughly deserved 3 points.
Well, obviously the goal scorer. We saw him come on. Alexander Isak come on for Joe Willock, which we were quite surprised. Actually, we thought he'd come on for Wilson. Wilson there's still something not right about Wilson. He still doesn't look like the Wilson of a few months ago. He's not bursting with speed behind defenders. I think he might have a tight hamstring or something, and they're trying to nurse him through games. But to be fair, Isak come on again, looked even sharper. Every game he's coming on, he's looking sharper and sharper and sharper. And there was some meaty tackles thrown on him as well by the Fulham players. He got launched in the air at one point, and he's built like a pipe cleaner, isn't he? I was a bit worried he was going to snap into at one point. I think it was Ream or somebody just launched him in the air, but he got up and dusted himself down. And him, Maxi, and Wilson, they were looking really dangerous. Maxi nearly scored, and then obviously the goal comes. And it's got to be said, a brilliant ball by Sean Longstaff to the back post. Absolutely brilliant cross. Get a little bit lucky, hits off the defender, but Wilson with a beautiful little dink over. And obviously Isak is in the right place at the right time for a header. And it kind of takes us a little bit into this question of a front two. We've always said, it's one or the other, but they didn't half link up well, Mark, did they, for that goal? The two of them, it was brilliant, I thought.
They did. There was that subtle change of formation when he came on, and you started to see Isak play a little bit of a deeper role in that little hole behind Wilson to the left, and in behind him, and he was picking up that space and being able to drive in. You've obviously got Maxi, who was coming in from the left and cutting across. I thought he did really well, actually. The only thing I think he did wrong was when he got cleaned out, he stayed down, and it was late in the game, and you just go, come on, get up. There's not enough time to be doing that.
The fans got restless at that. Everyone was booing a little bit of that and getting a bit pissed off, I think, when he was down,
And I get that was a pretty sizable challenge, and that must have hurt a bit. But at that point, you've got to go, look, the free kick's not been given, get up, get on with it. And to be fair, he did eventually get up and stuff, and he carried on. But yeah, Isak was, again, looked lively, and starts to look the player that Newcastle signed, that you saw in the first couple of games, and He's now got what 3 and 4 games.
Look at he should have 4 really, because the second one shouldn't have been disallowed. Yeah,
but bear in mind that they're not full games, so he's got 3 and 2.990s. I think it's something like 323 minutes worth of games or something like that he's played, and he scored 3. So his record so far is pretty good. On Wilson, I think one of the comments there, he looks a yard short.
He does. Something's not right with him, mate. Something's not right with him, I think.
It's funny because I know there was some chatter in our group about him not looking right. And to be fair, I thought at times yesterday he looked closer to his best. There's a couple of touches.
Some of the turns, swivels, that one at the Elise's end. Yeah, that was a great effort. Yeah.
So there was I think Sharp brought the ball forward and played it to him, and he sort of held off the defender to shoot and forced Leno into a save. There was the other one where he turned the 2 defenders and really should have done better with that shot. And again, you get to the goal and just go, it's his perseverance and his quick thinking that once that ball drops, there's an awful lot of players would have had that drop off the defender and let it go for a corner, but he knew exactly where Isak was.
Yeah.
He knew exactly what to do next. He was quick enough to get onto it and just dink that across into an open goal, basically, for Isak to not into. So you saw the absolute benefit of keeping him on the pitch at that point. And I think, pretty much a full 90 does him some good, because it means, he's got it in his legs to be able to do that. He's not getting brought off after 60 minutes.
Yeah.
A bit of a rest now until is it Palace at the weekend, and he can go again at that point. And like you say, maybe you then start to see a potential with Bruno out, a little bit of a shift in a formation at that point. And I think the way that Newcastle ended the game, it was reasonably a 4-2-3-1 with Joe and Sean in the middle, with Isak just ahead of them, Maxi left. I think Almiron I guess it ended up being Murphy, didn't it? Right, and then Wilson as the 9. So that could potentially be it. He could go, I guess, a 4. He could still go with a 4-3-3 and play Isak from the left. But I think you do miss an awful lot of his quality by doing that. So there's plenty of options for him in that regard.
So it's a little bit like this we were talking about. I think in the chat. So there's different changes you could make to that side, as you rightly say. I put Willock out on the left mainly because I think his defensive work gives him that extra appeal. I think to Eddie Howe, that he can track back and he can obviously come back and help out Dan Bird if he's under pressure. You could equally, like you say, you could move Isak into that position and play Maxi in a free role behind Wilson, which he would cause absolute carnage in, wouldn't he, to be fair? But I think you're right, the injury to Bruno, there's 2 kind of questions, I think, that we've got really. So do we go like this with Bruno missing? Depending on how long Bruno's out for, like you said, a lot of these injuries where you think it's only a week or 2 end up being 2 months. And I hope that isn't the case with Bruno. We've got such big games coming. So 2 questions is obviously, does Isak coming back looking sharp give you that option to change things up? Or do they go out and sign a midfielder? There's been talk. I think we're looking at, was it Conor Gallagher, Loftus-Cheek, is it Ziyech as well from Chelsea? Apparently on loan
from Chelsea, isn't it?
Yeah, so the 3 of those. I still think. There was a great video, wasn't there, by was it Tifo? I think they were talking about sensible signings, and they put Conor Gallagher in there by John, who's been on our channel before. He's a great guy, John, and does really good videos for them. And he made a really good case for Conor Gallagher for his work rate and his effort and everything that he puts in. And I still think there's a player in Gallagher, Mark. I don't know if you agree. Do you think Gallagher's better than a Longstaff or a Willock? Personally, I think Willock is, I wouldn't say undroppable, but I think he's so important to the team and the way we get up the pitch that I don't know whether he could drop Willock at the minute. He didn't have his best game against Fulham. I thought Sean was better, but I think Willock generally plays, I think Willock's more of a threat, I think, than Sean in a game. Would you agree or disagree?
Certainly further forward. But the one thing you get with Willock is the interchangeability between him and Joe Linton. And you saw that against Fulham where, you started off with Joe further forward and then they swap. And you get that that stronger central midfield player in, and you allow Willock to get further forward, and it just allows him to keep doing that. So you can never have the opposition settle on one player in sort of one position at that point if you can flip them round. I don't think you get that from Gallagher in that position.
No,
I definitely think there's a player in there. We've seen it. He was excellent at Palace.
he was.
He's not really shone at Chelsea since he's sort of gone back, and I guess that's probably the way. I mean, they've been in such poor form anyway, so that's nobody's really shone. So, I mean, they've signed another 150 players this week, so they've got to get rid of a few.
Financial fair play. Financial fair play.
Well, when you sign a player on it for 80 odd million and you give him an 8.5-year contract, you can spread that fee across those 8 years, but that's a hell of a risk. And if you're doing that for every player, you've suddenly got massive wages for these players on a decade worth of contract. But that's a different story. I don't know. I think Gallagher's one. You maybe say if you can potentially bring him in on loan because it gives you another body, and it gives you.
It's no capital outlay then, is there, for the FFP? Is there?
No, you're gonna have to pay for wages. I mean, they're not going to be an awful lot. I don't think he's on a ridiculous wage at Chelsea, so that's one you could maybe try and do. But would they be looking to offload permanently to try and claw back some of the money? I know there's rumours about Sterling being available, even though he's only been there for 5 minutes. He's not.
That's crazy, that, isn't it? How much you'd be feeling as Raheem Sterling? You've left Man City, you've gone there, and they're signing these players who play in your position, like in such a short period of time. Do you think it's Potter that just doesn't fancy him? Do you think that's what it is?
I think Potter's inherited a basket case of a club, and I think part of his problem is he's not in charge of who comes in, and that's a real difficulty as a manager. And you almost got that from his press conference where he was talking about it, and the confusion around them having done the deal, because he didn't understand how they've done the deal for him and stuff like that. And you go, well, if you were any way involved in this, you would understand it and you would get what was going on. And it was an odd comment.
It was.
But I just think when you look at what Sterling's done since Potter's come in, I mean, Potter moved him around at all sorts. He's played him as a wing back. He's played him as a forward. He's played him as a midfielder. I don't think he knows quite what to do with the whole team yet. I think he's got to grips with that. And I think possibly the problem is you've got so many players to play in so many different positions. He just genuinely hasn't found the right person to fit in each place. And he's too busy trying to swap people over to keep people happy, perhaps, as well.
Yeah.
And then they just sign a load more. And it's just an odd thing. But I mean, if you could take a Sterling, do you know what I mean? I think we were talking about.
I'd love Raheem Sterling. Yeah,
I think he'd be.
Why wouldn't you?
Sterling, but,
experience, goals. I think Eddie Howe would get him playing as well. But the couple of comments there about Milinkovic Savic, we did a rumour has it on him a long time ago, didn't we? But there seems to be some
summer.
Yeah, it seems to be some rumblings going on that apparently we bid 60 million quid from, which is, if we have, I mean, that's amazing. What statement signing that is, but it doesn't seem to work with what Eddie Howe has been talking about. And I don't think Eddie Howe has been trying to throw people off the scent. I mean, dropping 60 million knicker on a lad as good as he is this window is a hell of an outlay. But maybe like you say, if a bit smarter signing could be a Gallagher on loan, which gives you more squad depth, and gives you options as well outside of Willock and Longstaff if they go off form or if Bruno gets hurt or whatever, if he's out for a period of time. I would still fancy Tielemans myself. I mean, I think for the price you could get Tielemans at. I think if Bruno is out I think BT said Bruno's only going to be out for weeks, not months, as the scan apparently didn't show any real damage, which is what Craig Hope was saying as well, which we can only hope is true. If that's the case, you don't need to go and buy someone like Yuri Tielemans. But if Bruno was out for a sustained period of time and someone like Tielemans is available for 20 million quid, I think you've got to go and get him, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. I think he definitely, at the price that he'll be now, if that was going to be the case, if you're going to miss him for a significant length of time, I think he'd be almost the perfect one to come in and sort of fill that void. He fills that creative void in that midfield three, because you don't get the same level of quality in that regard from Longstaff. You get the work ethic, you get the graft. The same from Joe Linton. He's not as creative a passer as Bruno. He's definitely creative as he drives forward. We saw that again at the weekend. His touch is a hell of a lot better than it used to be. There was a moment in the first half where he drove past a couple of players, and his sort of touch either side of the players was phenomenal. But you don't get the range of passing, you don't get the speed of thought from him either. I think you get that from Tielemans, especially in an attacking third. You get the goal threat in terms of long shots and stuff. So it's definitely a move. If Bruno was going to be out for any significant length of time, that would be a move I would make. If Bruno's only out for a couple of weeks, it's probably not one I would go for. And I do think there's an element of Tielemans is probably, and I can't remember who said this last week, that he's out until he's ready to move in the summer, and he's already got a club lined up.
Yeah, I think Carl said that. Carl thinks he's got a European club lined up, which is why he's half-arsing it for Leicester in many ways. But Ian says he thinks that Bruno being out might force PIF. So we've seen this before, haven't we? Obviously, when we signed Wood, we'd like to hope we get better quality this time around. But when we signed Wood, and then as Gibbo says, it was the same when Wilson was knackered. Then we went and bought Isak. So these signings have been made before, and Dan Ashworth teased it, didn't he? In the Leicester game, before the Leicester game, and he said if the right player was there, of course we would do something. I think Roger's making the point on Tielemans there, so he's going a bit stale on him. I didn't think he was great against us in the quarter final, but as Carl said, that maybe it's just because he's kind of half-arsed it. Roger says there he's put his notice in. I think a lot of the Leicester fans were saying that. I was watching some Leicester pods, and they're obviously very worried about where the season's headed and what Roger's plan is and all this stuff. And I think the Maddison comment came up yet again, and they said have Tielemans instead. So they were particularly too sad about losing Tielemans, But he is a hell of a player, as Shez says there. He has all the ability, but he doesn't trust his work ethic. As much as we criticise Longstaff and Willock, they never go missing.
That's a fair point.
That's a fair point, and it's probably a good segue as well into Sean. The great man himself, Big Al, on Match of the Day, singled out Sean for praise, which I really hope his mother's taped for him on Sky Plus, or he Sky Plused it himself, because it's not every day your hero praises you on Match of the Day. So I'm sure Sean's watched that back a couple of times. But we got some stats there for Sean's heat map in the game, Mark, and he was everywhere. And I think one of the comments that Big Al made, which I think was totally right, is if Sean Longstaff could actually finish, he would be an unbelievable midfielder, because he gets in these positions time and time again, doesn't he? And he seems to rush the shot. He seems to just get a little bit panicked, and I don't know what it is, but that's definitely part of his game that he needs to work on. But some of his passing, I thought was brilliant against Fulham, mate. He really did look the part, didn't he?
He did, and look, when he sort of moved into that role to take over from Bruno for the second half, and I thought he did incredibly well. He's not on that level. He's not as quick in thought as Bruno is. He's not quite as aware of where everybody is in the field. You can see Bruno like trying to get.
He knows before he's even got the ball. Bruno, he's got the radar, isn't he? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, sometimes Sean does take a little bit longer, but look, I mean, if you look at the numbers for the weekend, 88% passing accuracy, which I think is well above. It's obviously well above his normal average. He won 5 of 7 duels on the day, 4 or 5 on the ground. He puts in the graft. He gets around. His running stats for the weekend were incredible. I think he covered 11 kilometers.
It's 11 kilometers, way ahead of anybody else.
And his engine is there. And look, he's had his detractors, hasn't he, this season? And a lot of people have given him quite a bit of flack. But the lad never stops. He's not the finished article. He's not the best player in the side. But one thing you do get from him is you get hard work. And you get total commitment, and he's one of those players you love to have in the squad, because you can rely on him to put in his all at any point. And I thought he was fantastic yesterday in moving into that role and trying to be that main sort of central midfielder. And look, I know he's had a lot of praise for that cross. That ball into the box was inch perfect, just about over the defender, right onto Wilson's head, and it creates the goal. And that he's in the right place at the right time. He's missed a few as the weeks have gone by, and I thought he was almost unlucky first half where he has the one that's blocked and goes over the bar, but he's in the right place. And a little bit like Willock, it's one of those where maybe a goal will come and it will just open the floodgates a little bit, and more will follow, and the confidence will come in that area of the pitch. Yeah. But you can't take away from the amount of graft that he puts in, the amount that he does for the side.
Absolutely. BT says there, Shearer said his performance today and for the lot of the season, he's been superb. He controlled a lot of it today. If he could just work on his finishing a little bit, it would be a different story altogether. It is. I mean, it's. I think we're showing the potential's always been there. And as Ian says, that Sean's arguably our most improved player after Miggy. He was class yesterday. He really was. Just a little sidebar off Sean, just about Matty as well. We haven't got this in one of the topics, but I just wanted to comment on it, mate, because Eddie Howe was asked about Matty at the press conference, I think, in the lead up to the Fulham game. And again, he just said that we'll nurse the lad back to full fitness. He's Newcastle through and through. He's a lovely lad. Just like his brother, and I thought that was a real touch of class by Eddie Howe. It's come at a really bad time for Matty, that injury, and I don't think we'll see Matty probably back in a Newcastle shirt again. If I'm honest, I think that'll be him done until he's back fit, and then the club might help him move on and find another club or whatever, reach out to some contacts for him. But it's a shame that Matty hasn't kicked on. But I think from Sean's point of view, he's kind of come back from the dark days of Steve Bruce. And he is really showing what he's worth. I mean, the good thing about Sean is he's almost like 85% there, Mark, isn't he? That last 15% is that final ball, is that shot, is that just that last little bit of class that makes you a really good midfield player. And I think it'll come. I think Eddie Howe can get it out of him. I really do think he's going in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, he's... How old is he now, Sean? He's
24?
Is he 25, 24, 25? He's got plenty of time left. I mean, it's not like he's 30 and he's not going to learn anything new. I don't think he can become much more technical. He's not going to become Brazilian overnight. He's not going to become that sort of player.
Not going to become Gerrard, is he? Let's be honest. He's not going to do that.
No, but what he can work hard. And he can learn some of the things. He can work on his touch. He can work on his shooting ability. He can work on his positional play, and get those to a point where he absolutely is part of that first team. And almost regardless of who comes in, because you can show that worth to the side in that regard. And he's definitely doing it. And if you look at where he was a year ago. I mean, he's miles ahead of where he was. He was
heading out of the team. He was on his way to Everton. More on them in a minute, but he was on his way to Everton, wasn't he? Yeah. Well, I bet he's happy as a pig and shit he didn't go there, mind.
I've talked about one basket case of a club tonight. They are definitely number two.
We'll get into them in a second. But BT's right. He's saying his incredible energy levels makes him a perfect kind of foil for Howe's pressing style. He totally does, and I think there's certain players that. They may not be Hollywood names, but they will just be so effective under this manager and the way he wants to play it. And Sean is definitely one of them. Kumar saying, what do we think about Murphy? How rates him? I think Murphy will run a lot for you, but I think that's about as much as you get out of him. I don't think he's got any real quality. He hasn't really got a brain either. I often refer to him as the scarecrow for the Wizard of Oz if he only had a brain. But, Murphy does work hard and he runs himself into the ground. I mean, what you don't get from Murphy, what you get from ASM sometimes is you don't see Murphy rolling on the floor and holding his hands up in the air like ASM does. ASM's got all the ability in the world, but he doesn't have the work rate that Murphy does. But I think sooner or later, Kumar, we're going to have to step away from these kind of ranked average players. No offense to him, but we are heading in the right direction. We're a top 3 Premier League side at the minute. We're in the semi-finals of the League Cup. we can't be bringing on people like Jacob Murphy if we're going to stay here. That is just not sustainable. You know, we need to be bringing on better players. And as Mark said there, like so Raheem Sterling and people like that, you know, that's where we need to be. If we're going to stay the
Although, if you remember, if you listened, was it Gary Neville last week that, you know, Arsenal didn't have the opportunity to bring on a Chris Wood and a Jacob Murphy. Well, that's lucky for them, honestly.
If only they did, Gary.
I like Jacob Murphy's effort. He does put everything in. He just has a really limited level. He's not that quite. You will always get every effort from him. He doesn't shirk anything, but that's it. He doesn't have any real attacking threat. I mean, you touched on some of his stats the weekend. I know it's limited game time, but he has absolutely nothing going forward.
Yeah, he's got no assists really, has he? No threat.
No assists, no goal threats. You've seen when he goes through, and you know the times that you've seen him go through one-on-one a number of times, and he for want of a better phrase, he completely shits the bed because he doesn't know what to do. He panics, and at that level, you cannot get to the next one with a player like that who can't do that, you know, a job when he comes in. But let's not take away anything about what he's given to the side, and he does give everything. So you can't hold him for what he doesn't have. Look, he's not going to be another St. Maximin. He's not going to be another Almiron. He comes in, he will do a job, and he will do graft. And there's a reason why Eddie Howe brings him on in front of St. Maximin against Arsenal, because he knows exactly what he's going to get. He's going to get the workhorse. He's going to track back. He's going to put in tackles, and he's going to help out. What he's not going to do is give you that threat going forward.
Absolutely. BT's got a good point there. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, but there's a great clip of Marco Silva going mad at the end of the game, and Murphy's just behind him, and he kind of goes, "Ooh." Well, he walks away from him with this great expression on his face. So he's very good at that, I must admit, as Jacob Murphy. He seems like a real character, doesn't he? I remember seeing that clip when he had a few beers and he just jumped up on a lamppost and started singing "He's Brazilian, he only cost 40 million." And all the fans started singing as well. So he does seem like he's got a real character about him, Jacob Murphy. But yeah, so it was a good result in the end. You know, we were happy with it. I think we're all happy with it. You can't always win pretty all the time. You can't always beat teams 5 or 6-0. I think teams are coming in and having low blocks and digging in against Newcastle now, so we have to break them down. But as we said when we finished the game and a couple of beers, having the extra quality that Isak's bringing in depth can win you games like that. You know, and that's why maybe we could do with a couple of more game changes like that being signed. This might not be the window for it, maybe the summer, but you know, I really hope that we can stay in this position where we are in the league. But our fans are very happy, unlike some other fans at the minute who are a little bit loopy, a little bit crazy. And one thing that really made me laugh, and I know it made you laugh, Mark, as well, that the Everton fans, if anyone didn't know, are an absolute meltdown. And what was hilarious was the Twitter spaces for Everton fans. They were having this huge, big, psychiatrist session on Twitter Spaces about how shit they were and how fucked up they were. And I would say about 30 or 40% of the people listening were Newcastle fans. You sick bastards. Laughing away at the Evertonians.
There were an awful lot of other fans, and they were on for a long time. And it was...
Oh, yes.
I mean, you don't like to see it happen to any kind of... But it was entertaining. And some of the comments that were coming out were just phenomenal. I've never heard anything like it. And I mean, I sort of logged into it about 9:00, and it was just, wow, this is a fan base in total meltdown at the moment.
Man.
There were one or two sort of trying to be sensible about it. There were one or two that just, trying to justify why fans are chasing Anthony Gordon down the street and stuff. And it's just, they're a mad bunch. They really are.
Well, the Scouse Mackhams, as Gibbo says, I often call him that as well. But you can see these were the scenes, obviously, was it Mina? Yara Mina, wasn't it? He got out the car to talk to them. And then this lad in a black shirt spent a long time talking to Mina. It called him lad about 6 million times in the space of about 10 minutes. I'm not actually sure Mina understood a fucking word he was saying. but just kind of, he diffused the situation quite well and then managed to get out there in one piece. But like you say, Gordon was a strange one. I mean, let's just look at the football side with Gordon. You don't foul anybody that far from goal when the James Ward-Prowse is on the pitch. That's the stupidest thing you could ever do in a relegation battle. But then, didn't he flash his lights at them and try and kind of drive past them or something when they were trying to stop?
I think so, yeah. I think the comment basically was, look, it wouldn't have happened had he wound his window down. Now, and they were already on his back anyway, and Jesus, it was just... I think at that point, when there's a group like that hanging around outside, you don't want to stop. You don't want to wind your window down. I get what they're talking about, but given the way that things have gone in the last week, when you've got one of the owners group getting put in a headlock,
like a middle-aged woman though, woman that put in a headlock and spat at her car. Like, what the fuck is the damage? Man?
And for any of them, and then for there to be a credible threat on the owners, for them to turn around, you should not come to the game because we've got a credible threat on your safety.
That's wrong, isn't it?
That's a fan base gone mad, and that's a level beyond it. And look, I mean, Christ, Newcastle fans got pelters for wanting Steve Bruce out.
Yeah,
they wanted, and yes, there was some abuse. Most of it was online. I don't remember there being any real physical threats or violent threats against them in person or anything. I think there was one. Was there one already mentioned the other day about something maybe to do with Charnley, which I hadn't heard of? But generally speaking, it was, we want them out. We're pissed off with them. We're going to tell them we're pissed off with them. But most of that's done online, and it's done through from the stadium. It's not
or scribbled on your nana's bed sheets, Ashley out or whatever. People used to write back, but we got loads of shit for that, and the amount of shit that Ashley put us through. I mean, Jesus Christ! If somebody got him in a headlock, I think they would have filled them in the back of the bloody big market. Probably they'd have the chance. But you're right. It's a fan base gone mad. I mean, Everton are a real self-entitled bunch for a team that spent most of their Premier League existence mid-table or relegation zones, except for when Moyes had them punching above their weight. But I just think generally that they're absolutely vile fan base at the minute. Really, they didn't even want. Was it the manager from, what was he called again? Was it the Croatian lad? Was he the Fulham manager or the Watford manager? They didn't want him. And then they wanted Lampard instead, didn't they?
I remember the graffiti, wasn't it? Was it
Perisic or something? It was a P began with a P or something like that.
Perisic.
No, it wasn't Perisic. We'll find it. If someone in the comments can remember who that was, let us know. But so they kicked off then, and they got their way, and they got Frank Lampard in. They just stayed up by the skin of their teeth. They're setting off fireworks outside people's hotels to try and actually, put the team off. And they end up getting beat anyway. So they spend loads of money on fireworks, and just it makes absolutely no sense at all. And well, Sean's just led us into the next one there. So I mean, Everton fans, I really hope they go down, to be fair, because I think that they're stinking the Premier League. Pereira, that's it. He was
Pereira. Portuguese, was he?
Yes,
Portal or something like that. And
he was, yeah. But that, to me, Everton are going the same way that Villa did, that Sunderland did, that Newcastle did. Just when they're continuously stinking up the Premier League and they don't deserve to be in the league anymore. Your luck's ran out. And I think this is Everton's time to go. And if anything, going and starting again might be the best thing for them. Get a chance to clear the decks, get rid of a lot of the players that are there that maybe aren't good enough, build it back up again, and then come back and do it again. But moving on to another crazy fan was this tit at the weekend in the North London derby that decided to jump on top of the board and channel his inner Karate Kid to kick Ramsdale in the back here, which I've got I've got no idea what goes through people's minds at this, Mark, where when you're watching a game, have you ever just sat there and thought, a bit bored here, I might just jump and kick the goalkeeper in the back? I mean, what the fuck is wrong with fans these days, man?
I've never got so pissed off with an opposition player that I've ran down the stand to jump on the board to kick him and then run back into the stand. No, I've not.
Yeah,
but you get pissed off with him, of course, but you shout at them. That's what you're supposed to do. I mean, it just the thing that's got me from this whole point was is the comments from Richard Keys again, who was trying to blame Arteta for this. He's tried to blame Ramsdale and
Really?
Arteta. Now,
Well, Arteta
Ramsdale
tried to
says
get
he's
them
gonna,
all away, didn't he? I think Arteta did quite well
yeah, but
handling that, to be fair.
his comments were basically that Arteta's brought this on himself by being such a figure on the side and always getting involved and always shouting and being dancing around on the side of the pitch and all the antics that he gets up to, that this is what's happened because of that. Now Ramsdale gets to the end of the game, turns around, pumps his fist, kisses the badge, whatever.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's what you do. You're at the ground of your bitter rivals. You celebrate. He hasn't gone and stood in front of the stand and given it, 20 minutes of it.
He's not going to add a bio.
I was just getting to that. He hasn't ran from one end of the pitch to the other to celebrate in front of the fans. It's a 2-second thing. He goes to pick his stuff up from next to the goal to go off, and this dickhead runs down and tries to kick him. And it's just like, oh, come on, man. You've got to be better than that.
What worries me about this, though, is that we'll be end up going the same way as the European leagues did, where you got netting up and the players can't. I remember when Maxi scored at the Gallagher and he did that, bloody karate kick thing, and then just jumped into the crowd and someone had his Gucci headband and were like swinging it in the air. There's that passion that you won't get anymore because of knobheads like this that are just ruining it for everybody. And player safety as well. You don't know what people are doing there, do you? Yeah, exactly, Stu. That was disgusting when that happened to Jack Grealish. It really, really was. I mean, if players don't feel safe, Mark, that's big trouble, isn't it? That's big trouble for the game.
Absolutely. The funniest thing about that whole incident with Grealish was he went on to score the winner as well, and that was just. I mean,
he just smirked the whole interview afterwards.
Didn't he? To the Birmingham City fans, that was just perfect. But you're right that sooner or later something will happen. And it does start to get dodgy. And the one that always sort of springs to mind, and it had nothing to do with player safety at that point. But you remember the Just Stop Oil thing?
Yes, the Everton guy. I remember this. Yeah, we talked about
the kid in the stand who offered the stewards a knife, was a pen knife or something, out of his coat, and you're like, how the hell have you got into the... Do you know what I mean? What are you doing with that in your coat? How have you then not been picked up and thrown out from that point? Because it was on camera, handing it across, going, here you go, mate, you can get them off with this. And you're like, Jesus Christ, if that's the kind of thing that's in the football ground, that can get scary. When you start to see things like this happen, I don't want to be sensationalist about it, but it's a matter of time before something like that does happen. I hope to God it never does. Yeah. But there's got to be one dickhead. There's always one. And something will happen. We've seen it in other sports, and it's got to be 1 in a billion chance, but that one is always around, and somebody just flips their lid, not in the right, they've got a few screws loose, and then that's it. And that could be cataclysmic. But it's just, like I say, I don't want to be too sensitive. I hope it never happens. But when you start to see people carrying stuff like that, then you do start to think, Jesus, that kid runs down, different frame of mind, and he is carrying something.
Well, look at that kid. If he can get that close to Ramsdale, if that kid had a blade and he got that close to Ramsdale, who knows what he could do. But just a question came in there from Shez. Sorry, mate. Just getting Shez's question because he put it up earlier. So the question to us both is, he said that he would only be able to tell about Man United's resurgence once they played City. And do you think they're a threat to us? Now, I mean, they're definitely a threat because they're up there with us. There's no doubt about that. That goal should never have stood. Yeah, but that goal should never have stood for starters. But
for every possible way you look at that goal, it's not a goal. It's offside. And the argument that you're trying to claim, well, he's not touched the ball, he's not interfered with play. He absolutely has interfered. Every stride that he made towards the ball was interfering with it. He interfered with the two defenders that were following him. Akanji knows he's offside, but still has to track, but knows that he's off to play the ball. So he almost doesn't sort of track as quickly as he possibly could do, because you could see straight away he knew he was offside.
Yeah.
The goalkeeper's the biggest one, because you see Edison set up for Rashford hitting it. And then all of a sudden, Rashford stops at the last second, and Ederson's nowhere because he's not set. He's not set for Fernandes taking the shot.
There's no
He's
way
set
he
for
can
Rashford.
make that save because he just doesn't know who's going to shoot. So it's one of them, isn't it? There's no way he can
He's
save
set
that as a
up.
keeper.
No, if you look at his positioning, he's set up for Rashford either hitting it with the outside of his right or hitting it with his left foot because of the positioning of the ball. Nothing else is going to happen at that point because I think that the defenders are close enough where he can't then try and knock it round him. It has to be hit at that point, and it's only at that moment that he stops and allows Fernandes to come from the other side, and he takes the shot. But at that point, Ederson is completely wrong-footed because he's set up for the player that's run with the ball, and he's run this far away from the ball for 20 yards. That's offside. By any whatever law you look at.
That's a great comment, by the way, from Gibbo. If only Ronaldo had stayed, there would have been nowhere near us, mate. Absolutely. Great comment. But Shez says there, it was horrendous, one of the worst VAR decisions you've ever seen. Sean is saying that we're battling Man United for third. Absolutely. Spurs are nothing. I think Spurs are nowhere near this top four. I can't see them getting in, mate. I really can't. I think we've got Spurs' number this season.
I think the top four you're going to have it's going to be the top four now, isn't it? It's going to be Arsenal, City, Newcastle, Man United in whatever order. But Man U have hit their stride, and you know they've played very well at times. They've had some luck along the way.
Getting rid of him has been a big thing. Moving him out and sorting that problem out. It's freed Rashford up a bit as well, isn't
it? I think so. And Rashford looks a different player this season, and it just looks like everything's going right for him at the moment. He's playing. He's happy. He's scoring goals. Is it now 7 home games on the spin that he scored? He looks like he's back to his best. And you know they've added 1 or 2 really good players into that squad, so they are definitely a threat to that finishing position. But
I think so.
The wheels could come off again at any point. You know what I mean? It's they start playing Maguire again, everything could go wrong.
Fucking hell! I don't think that desperate, mate. But isn't he going to Aston Villa because he went to a service station in Birmingham? So I mean, the first of April is the big test, really, isn't it? Because we're playing them at St James's Park, and we'll see where we are there. That could be a bit of a splitter between third and fourth, really, if we can get the win on them, and if we're still informed where we are now, and Isak's fit and firing, and maybe if we add 1 or 2 in the window, you know that's not an easy place for anybody to come in. Man United will be probably lucky if they can get a draw out of that, possibly. You know, so I think it's great to be up there and talking about these kind of things.
Absolutely right. And look, it's we will go back, and I'm just going to flip back to a VAR decision again, or not a VAR decision, but a referee decision while we're on that subject. And one of the things I wanted to just pull up, and it goes back to the Fulham game, and I didn't pull this up before, but while we're talking about dodgy referee decisions and stuff, is the free kick in the first half that Newcastle got. It was given at this point for a foul on Sean Longstaff. I circled where the foul happened. And that's where the free kick was. The referee inexplicably then picks the ball up and walks another 5 yards further back to move it further away. I just, again, it's one of those where you look, what are you doing? What made you think that foul was 10 yards away? It was just ridiculous. And but again, it's just the level of poor officiating.
It's quite pertinent, though, isn't it, really? Because just to end on this one, I suppose, when you're talking about, points, 1, 2 points in between 4th, 5th, 6th, these big decisions can affect the whole dynamic of a top 4. That can affect the whole dynamic of a title. I mean, at the minute, Arsenal are kind of pulling away a bit. City have been beatable by teams that should never have beat them, previously. Man United will burn out, as I think one of the comments said there before. Got to remember that City and Manchester United have got Europe to contend with. We haven't got Europe to contend with. If we win the League Cup, we've got a trophy under the belt by the end of February, and we're still in the top 4 picture. They've all got loads of teams to play. Big European ties to play that they might think they need. The first team 11 for that. They don't want to risk Rashford in a league game. Then they might get caught out. Teams like Brentford have beaten people, Brighton have beaten people, Bournemouth. pull off a little result here and there. Obviously we're beating teams. There's a lot of games that can catch people out. And I think as Sean's saying there, we were robbed as well against Palace. Yeah, we've been robbed in games. We should probably be higher in the league than we are. But listen, I still stand by, Mark. If Newcastle United can win the League Cup and finish in the top 5 or 6 of the Premier League, that is an unbelievable season by anybody's imagination. We could never have dreamed that last year.
No, look, I think that every sort of talk going into the season was, look, top 10, if you can get 8th, it would be a fantastic season, defying all expectations at the moment. And the sort of the run into a cup semi-final, potentially a cup final, would just be huge. That would just be the icing on the cake for the season. Look, even if you drop away in the league, even if you drop into 5th or 6th place, it is excuse the cat. It's still been a phenomenal. Obviously, you don't want that to happen, but even if it was to happen, and the other side start to pick up points, and Newcastle, for whatever reason, drop a few. Look, it's still been phenomenal. It's still really early on this journey, and you're probably a couple of steps ahead of where you really expect to be. And European football at the end of the season is such a big coup, because you then increase that next level of play that's willing to come. Yes, you can spend some money. Yes, you've got the draw of the club and the crowd and all that kind of stuff. But you've then got European football to be able to go, look, we've got Europa Conference, or we've got Champions League football, or the Europa League to offer you. What our next step is, that top 4. Our next step is the Champions League, whatever that would be. That's a seller. So look, it's whatever. I think whatever happens now, it's already been a phenomenal season, and it doesn't look like slowing down. Yes, you've had 2 0-0 draws, one against Leeds, where really that should have been a win. You've had a 0-0 against Arsenal, where really it could have gone either way in that regard. If Joe Linton scores that header, if Arsenal take a chance that they had, that could have gone either way. And then you start to look back and you think, what if? The Palace game, the Bournemouth game, you could be sitting right on Arsenal's tails. Yeah. And it just now, it really doesn't look like slowing down. You've scrapped one yesterday where, yes, Newcastle completely dominated in terms of stats for the game. And I don't think I brought this up before, but if you look at the stats for the game, every positive stat is green. Yeah. In terms of Newcastle. Defensively, it was pretty much all for Fulham. Every attacking stat, every passing stat, everything was all on Newcastle's favour. I mean, they had 62.3% possession during the game. For all intents and purposes, they dominated the game, but they managed to scrap their way to a 1-0 win, and they weren't quite at their best, but still got the result from it. And I think that's the sign. That's the mentality that Eddie Howe has in. And I think what you need to see probably for the rest of the season is when those games are scrappy, like the Leeds game and like Fulham yesterday, that the crowd holds, the crowd don't get nervous, and enjoy this and just keep that noise going and drive those players forward, because that was key to yesterday. Absolutely.
I'm getting new ones tomorrow, Ian. I'm going to get blue ones, so I look like fucking Timmy Mallet next time I come on, mate. Never mind Alan Carr, but I could take them off. I won't be able to read a goddamn thing you were typing, mate. It would just be watery blurb. But thanks for jumping in the comments, buddy. But that's us pretty much wrapped up, mate, for this episode. Thank you so much to everybody who's been in the comments, Ian and everybody else. I really appreciate it. It always helps the channel flow and the crack flow as well. And as we mentioned at the start, if you've just discovered us tonight, please consider clicking that subscribe button. We'd love you to come and join us. Loads of room for you here and evermore. All free content. We don't charge anybody for this. We just love talking about the club and what's not to love about Newcastle United at the minute. Everything is going the way we want it to go, and long may it continue. Me and Mark will be back with the rest of the guys on. Sorry, you won't be back, Mark. I'll be back.
I'm not on Wednesday.
You're having the week off.
I've got a week off.
Yes. We will. We'll be back slightly later time, I think, of 7:30 because I have to drive somewhere. So hopefully I can get there. Yeah, sorry, Roger's in the comments. We'll have the rumours on the Wednesday, Roger. We'll go through transfer rumours on the Wednesday, mate. So make sure you tune in for that 7:30, guys, and we'll catch you later. Have a good one.
Take care, guys. Cheers for coming.